Imagine being woken up from your sleep and seeing hell in your bedroom. Yeah. Just like any other time, cousins, what's up? Your girl is back with another story time. So let's not waste no time and let's get into it. So for this story time, cousins, we're going to call her Selena. Now, Selena has been spiritually gifted and has been able to see things, hear things, the whole nine. So when she was 7, she got sick with salmonella poisoning and almost unalived. It took her months to recover. Now, during this time, she said that she saw a little boy around her brother's age who was 2 at the time. She said he would run around her bed and play and watch her, but he never really interacted directly with her. She said once she's fully recovered, she never saw the little boy again. So fast forward to when she turns 15, her parents had brought a new home. Now, her and her sister end up arriving to the home before her parents and other siblings did. So they go into the house, they look around the house, excited to be in this new home. Now, they enter one bedroom and happen to open the closet, and they saw a black suit hanging in the closet. Once Selena and her sister laid eyes on the black suit, they said that they felt something running towards them. However, they didn't see anything. That alone terrified them, and they waited for their parents and other siblings outside of the house. Now, Selena and her sister had to share a room. Now, they're up late because they're excited about this new home, and they're just chit-chatting and talking, until all of a sudden, they heard footsteps coming up the stairs. Now, whatever it was, she said it stopped before it got to the top of the stairs, and it started to laugh. Her sister ended up running from her bed to get into Selena's bed. Her sister said, "Did you just hear that?" Now, her sister is older. She's actually 3 years older than Selena. But however, Selena didn't want her to know that she was scared as well because she was comforting her sister. So instead of telling the truth, Selena told her, "No, I didn't hear anything." Selena always been very protective over her siblings. Now, she did end up telling her older sister that going back to that night, she did hear something, although it was 7 years later when she told her. Now, a year goes by after this, and Selena is now pregnant with her first daughter. So she's asleep one night, and when she wakes up, she sees a little girl staring at her. She said the little girl disappeared so quickly, she didn't even have time to process what was going on. So fast forward, Selena has her daughter. So at this time, her daughter is about a week old. Selena is asleep. However, when she wakes up, she sees a man towering her daughter, looking at her, smiling, and then proceeded to walk away. She said she got up so quick to follow this man. However, he disappeared. She said she checked all of her doors, all of her windows, and everything was locked and nothing was disrupted. She said she didn't feel scared though. It felt like this man brought in protective energy. So a few years after this, Selena ended up having her second daughter. Now by this time, she has 3 children, all 4 and under. They ended up all moving to Martinez, Georgia, and that's when she said even weirder things started happening. Her oldest daughter kept telling Selena that she saw some type of sparkling glitter at her bedroom door. Selena said now every time she was inside her bathroom, she would feel something touch her inappropriately. She said after a couple of times of that happening, she avoided going to that bathroom completely. Now, as time goes on, Selena is now at the house by herself along with her kids because her husband has to go away to military training in the field. She said things like her bedroom fan would turn on by itself, although the power switch was still turned off. But that's not the worst that has happened. So this particular night, her 2-year-old daughter wanted to sleep with her. Now, her other children, which was 5 and 6 at the time, was already asleep in their own beds. Selena said it was about 3 a.m. when she was awoken by the sound of her 2-year-old screaming at the top of her lungs, although she was still asleep. She said she got up and put her hand around her daughter to cuddle her and comfort her. She said by that time when her daughter calmed down, she ended up turning back over to go back to sleep. Now, when she turned over, she saw a fire pit coming from her bedroom floor. Coming out of that fire pit was a woman with her flesh on fire, and she was screaming in agony. Behind the woman, Selena said she saw what appeared to be a demon grab the woman and pull her back down. The woman is still screaming. Now, Selena's daughter wakes up and she starts screaming. Selena says she grabbed her daughter so fast and ran out of that room. Now, when she turned around to look back, everything had disappeared. She said that was the most terrifying thing she ever has experienced in her life. So again, guys, if you have any paranormal stories or any type of story that you feel like is juicy enough for me to tell, make sure you guys submit it to my DM, or you can email it to the email that's in my bio. Until the next story, guys, enjoy this one.
So this guy says that really weird things started to happen after his grandmother passed away. Now, he says that he was a child when all of this happened, but he was always really close to his cousin that happened to live at the grandmother's house. Some of the family members that still lived in the grandmother's home would say that they would hear footsteps at night, or like if somebody was moving the dishes. And the worst part was they would also feel as if somebody would sit on the bed while they're laying there. I would simply pass out if I felt that. So one day he had spent it with his cousin. Then he decided that he was gonna stay the night there. He was gonna sleep in the living room on the couch, so he got a blanket, got a pillow, and he laid down, and right in front of him was a rocking chair. So he closes his eyes to go to sleep, and then in another moment he opens them back up, and that is when he sees the rocking chair move down, almost as if somebody had just sat on it. Honestly, it didn't feel like a big deal because he just thought that it was one of the cats who had passed by, and that's why the rocking chair made that movement. Now he gets off the couch to see if the kittens are there, and unfortunately there was no kitties around the rocking chair. See, that's where he fucked up, because if that was me, I wouldn't have gotten up to see if the cat was there. The cat was there. Let me go back to sleep. The cat was there. Yeah. That's when he decided that he was gonna extend his arm to move that rocking chair just to see why it had made that movement. Bitch, just fucking wait. He obviously tries to push the rocking chair so that it could rock, and he moves the chair. The rocking chair didn't start rocking. It stayed still after he moved it. So he tries again. He does it with a little more force this time. Hey, maybe the rocking chair was losing its touch. No, the fuck it wasn't. Rocks it again, right? With his hand, moves it. It stayed still, not moving, not rocking. Almost as if somebody was sitting on the chair. Obviously, he's very scared, and he just ran to the couch, covered himself with a blanket, and he said eventually he ends up falling asleep. The following morning when he wakes up, he's looking at that rocking chair, and he decides, well, let me try again. It's daylight. Let me see why it's not rocking. Obviously, maybe there's something under the chair. He extends his arm, he moves the rocking chair, and the rocking chair is moving how it should have moved last night. What the fuck? If anything, it just confirmed that something was definitely sitting on that rocking chair. He was like, yeah, the chair was rocking, going back and forth like if nothing had happened last night, like normal. Now, this person said that that's the only experience that he had at his grandmother's house, and now he's gonna tell his experience that his dad had in that house. So there was a day where they were having a family gathering, and he had already told his dad what he experienced there. He didn't think that the dad believed him, so the dad was gonna take advantage of the fact that they were at his mom's house, the grandmother that passed away, and he was gonna see if he could communicate with her. He had obviously already heard the rest of the relative stories that lived there, and now hearing what his son told him about the rocking chair, he just wanted to experience it and see if it was real. So he ends up going to this like washer and dryer room that they had on the first floor, and in there by himself, obviously he checked to make sure like nobody was around. He started to ask his mom, which is the kid's grandmother, for a sign. Let me know you're here. Do something. I need to know if you're here. And he got confirmation that his mom was still there, or at least, you know what, this is just my opinion, not what the kid says, but I'm just like, I feel like sometimes things could pretend to be your family members if you're asking for signs like this. But to him, he got confirmation that his mom was definitely there. As he's standing in that room, the door opens and just slams shut. Now, in the moment, he did get scared, so he immediately goes out of that same door, but more so because he wanted to see if anybody had slammed it. Like, did anybody in the family slam it, because they heard me, and obviously there was nobody there. Now, apparently he has more stories of his grandmother's house, but this is all that he is willing to share at the moment. But what do you guys think? Because like that rocking chair, why? First of all, I would have beat up my cousin, because why the fuck you didn't let me sleep in the same bed as you? Why did you let me experience this by myself? But also, he's too curious. I would have never rocked that chair. I would have been like, cats did it, good night. Forced myself to go to sleep. But what would you guys have done?
You want to hear some scary shit? Well, let's go to Neverland Ranch. Now, we all know that at the time of his death, Michael Jackson was not staying here. He was actually staying at a mansion in Las Vegas. After his untimely death, Of course, the estate goes on, somebody else buys it, and there is a skeleton crew of guards to walk over and watch over the grounds. These accounts of the things that happen at Neverland Ranch come from the security guards who were patrolling the area. Side note, when the kids would ask Michael Jackson if they could go back to Neverland Ranch for home, the bodyguard stated that he would say no because the evil has already taken over there. The first security guard account happened while he was patrolling the grounds, and he said that he heard a slight, faint sound of music. Well, apparently there was an amphitheater there at Neverland Ranch. He stated that he followed the sound, and it was clearly Billie Jean, like one of Michael Jackson's biggest hits, coming from this amphitheater. He said once he arrived to the stage, the music just stopped. And he saw nothing and no one. There were also reports of the motion sensors and cameras going off, but they would never see anything. They would also hear deliberate footsteps, like pacing back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, in Michael Jackson's old bedroom. Also in the bedroom, there are cameras. They would catch images of a shadow. When they would go to investigate, it would be gone. One of the most unsettling things, one of the security guards, I believe his name was Victor, stated, the Ferris wheel. Now, it turns on its own at will. There is no power going to any of the amusement park rides ever. Since Michael has left the building. And he stated once he walked up to the Ferris wheel, it just stopped. I believe one of the most unsettling things that I've heard is the feeling of sadness that surrounds the place. I think it kind of goes back to, I don't know if you've seen the movie or not, but the loneliness and sadness that we were unaware of, right? Before his passing, and throughout his life. I believe one of the guards stated that there is a mirror room, like a fun house, and there were noises and sounds coming from there as if somebody was dancing and, gliding on the floor. She gets there, and in the mirror, there's an image that is resembling Michael Jackson, but scary. As if it was something that had taken on in his identity and mimics him. My thoughts, maybe with all the traumatic incidents and everything that Michael Jackson dealt with at that mansion, he birthed a poltergeist. Or maybe his own sadness and depression couldn't go with him when he left, so it went back home. What do you think? Think it's some scary shit?
As a child, I often walked the Finnish woods with my mother, but once I got lost, and people who were not people helped me find my way back. Submission to Spooky Scary Storytime comes from Stefan, and he says his family is actually from Finland. And growing up, as he and his mother would take these long forest walks, she would often recount stories and folklore about trolls and gnomes and other creatures that were said to inhabit the Finnish woods. To this day, he says most of his knowledge about these creatures is from stories that his mother told him, as well as stories that were passed down by others, but sadly he feels that these things are fading from collective memory. Of course, she gave him rules, like if you're walking through the woods and you feel like someone's watching you, don't look back because they might see you looking at them. And if you feel like someone's chasing you, don't run because then they know that you're aware of them. Also, it was important to not stand still because they might grab you. As they walked and she told him these stories, he always thought they were just that, stories, but he loved them and he was very entertained by them. And as they walked, he would often wander off the main path to find berries and sticks and other interesting things. But the woods near their house were small and familiar and they'd walk them a million times. And so even if he wandered off a little bit, he was always able to hear his mother calling him. Besides that, there was no real risk of him wandering too far because the woods weren't that large and there was nothing dangerous that lurked inside of them. So it didn't feel like a threat for him to wander just a little ways away. Even now, he says there is one experience that still is confusing to him because he can't find an explanation for it even now. And he says one day they were wandering in the woods and he went off to do his usual thing and to find some berries or sticks, and he was climbing some boulders when he came across an area of the forest that he had never seen before. This was exciting to him because he and his mother had explored these woods many, many times and he thought that he knew every corner. But suddenly he found himself trapped in what he describes as like a green energy dome. And he says even the forest floor was different. Everything was covered in moss. The rocks and trees were different. There were species of plants that he had never seen before, and it just felt different. He remembers at first feeling excited and then walking toward the center of the dome, but after a moment he felt very disoriented and confused and started pacing the perimeter of the dome and calling for his mother, but she didn't respond. Suddenly he saw figures on the other side of the dome, and what was strange was he couldn't make out their faces, but they were distinctly human shaped. They were calling out to him and they sounded friendly and they said, "Who are you? What are you looking for? Who are you looking for?" And he explained that he was looking through his mother, and they told him to come closer. He approached them, but still, strangely, could not make out any features. He said it was just like there was nothing where their faces should have been. As he got close enough to where he felt like he could almost touch the dome wall, they pointed in the opposite direction and they said, "Go out that way. Your mother's on the opposite side of over there." He turned around and saw that there was a small break in what seemed to be the wall of the dome, and so he followed their guidance and went out that way. But when he turned around, he no longer saw any figures, and he followed their guidance, went out, and soon was in a part of the forest that he recognized. He could see his mother in the distance, and excited ran up to her, clung to her, and told her what had happened, and she did not seem moved or bothered by this. She just said, "Well, it sounds like the forest people helped you find your way back." He said, "Who were the forest people?" And she said, "We don't really know, but I'm glad they helped you." And he says to this day, he still has no explanation for what he experienced that day. He has revisited his childhood neighborhood, surveyed the area, and looked at maps, and cannot find any evidence that this dome or this place existed within this forest. Says the people that he saw and the place that he visited seem to not exist, at least in this world. He says though he has no idea what kind of portal he stepped through, he can still remember the vividness and the color of that part of the forest and the people that he encountered, though he still can't recall their faces. At the time, he said they also lived in a small community where everyone knew everyone, and these people were no one that was familiar to him. But he says he remembers feeling like he was able to trust them immediately, and he's grateful for that. So if you have any idea of who these forest people were or forest spirits, let him know. He'll be seeing the comments. Someone had asked on another video if I had any forest spirit stories, and so when I searched that term, this story came up. So if you're out there and you hear this, I hope you'd enjoyed it. If you have another topic you'd like me to search for, let me know, and I'm happy to look through my inbox. Also, if you have a spooky scary story time you think nobody would believe, please send it in. We would love to hear it.
Imagine walking alone late at night and then you hear a noise behind you, and the moment you decide to turn around to see what it was, this is what you see. It all started with this guy right here called Exploring the Unknown. This guy is a YouTuber that posts on his channel videos about him going to abandoned places and exploring them. You know, he posts a lot of videos like that, but this one is by far his scariest one. Because in this exact video right here, he decided to use the Randonautica app. This is an app that no longer exists, but existed around 2018. It was rumored that it took you to some abandoned and creepy places, and he decided to use it in this video. If you're interested, I made a video about it a long time ago, but anyway, let's keep with this guy. You see, this guy didn't waste any time, and he immediately went to the location that the app gave him. Started exploring that location, and it was pitch dark, okay? He's using a night camera right now. He was in some kind of forest just exploring, and then suddenly he heard a noise. Noise that he heard came from that way, and it was very clear, and you know, he decided to follow it because that's what he does. After following the noise for a while, as you can see, he saw something hiding behind a tree, and at first he didn't know what it was because it was very far. He kept trying to figure out what that thing was until he realized what it was and immediately started running. Apparently, he came across what people call a black-eyed children. These are children with entirely black eyes who live alone in forests and stay away from humans in general. And some people claim that they saw them before, although I find it hard to believe. I also made a video about them if you want more details.
What? Swear I saw someone scream. spooky place. I'm pretty sure she was in the car, knock on the door. What the f? What is that? What the f is that? What the f? Oh, what the f? What the f?
This glitch story is giving the other ones a run for their money because this isn't just one person's account. This has been happening to multiple people over decades on the same street in Liverpool, England. Bold Street is one of the most popular shopping streets in Liverpool. There are independent restaurants, boutique stores, and tons of people walking up and down the streets. Now, on the surface, this is a seemingly normal place, but since 1996, there are things going on here that nobody has ever been able to explain. And they even have a name for it. They call it the Bold Street Time Slip. Maybe you've heard of it, and if you have, you gotta let me know. I have chills just thinking about this. Sometimes visitors walking down this road will find themselves somewhere else, like transported to another time. There will be vintage cars where modern ones should be, and storefronts from establishments that have long since been gone, and people wearing clothing from a different era, just sort of walking past them like nothing's wrong. And then suddenly, they're back. Everything's back to normal, back to present day. These stories have been documented across multiple different independent sources over the last 30 years. The first documented account happened in July of 1996. An off-duty police officer named Frank was out shopping with his wife on a Saturday afternoon. So at one point they split up, and she goes off into a bookstore on Bold Street called Dylan's, and he went to a music shop nearby. So after he finishes up, he is heading back to meet her. So he passes the Lyceum post office at the entrance of the road, and everything goes quiet. It wasn't just quieter, I mean dead silent, unsettlingly quiet. The entire atmosphere seemed to have changed. It was like sound itself had been muffled. He described it as an oasis of quietness. And before he could process what was happening, a small box van came speeding across his path. It just barely missed him, and it was honking a vintage horn as it went. Kaplan's, an old Liverpool van company. And things just keep getting weirder. He looks up at Dylan's, and it doesn't say Dylan's anymore. Now the sign says Cripps, and the window that should have been full of books was now filled with ladies' shoes and accessories, vintage ones. He looks up and down the street. There are old-fashioned cars everywhere, not a modern thing in sight. Every single person he saw was dressed head to toe in clothing from the 40s and 50s. Women in headscarves and gloves, men in hats and overcoats. And the road itself, which had been pedestrianized, was booming with traffic. And then he noticed a woman nearby who looked just as out of place as he felt. She was wearing modern clothing with a modern handbag, looking super bewildered. So they make eye contact, but then she heads into Cripps and he follows her. The moment that they stepped into the threshold of that store, all of those vintage clothing and handbags gone. And you guessed it, books in their place. It was now Dylan's again, his wife's favorite bookshop. It was just back to normal. Just like that. So he goes straight to paranormal researchers and he reports everything. And sure enough, after some digging, they confirmed that a clothing store named Cripps had been in that place where now that Dylan's bookshop was. And Kaplan's was a real Liverpool van company active in that past era. So that alone is mind-blowing, but listen to this. So fast forward now to this decade. It was a Friday the 13th. Of course it was. And two young women headed down Bold Street to do some Christmas shopping. And they came across a sports shop that they had never seen before, called Ritzy Sports. They went inside and immediately something felt off. At first, they noticed that all of the prices on all the items were way too low. And everybody inside, including the staff, they were all dressed completely differently. One of the women picks up what looked like a vintage shoe, and they were just looking at it, holding it in their hands. And then in a blink, it wasn't Ritzy Sports anymore. Guys, they were standing inside a sushi restaurant called AKA Sushi.
The sports shop was just gone, and they are standing now in a completely different establishment in the same spot on that same street. Y'all, she was still holding the shoe. So, of course, they reported this, and one of the examiners that had looked at the shoe said that it was popular back in 1998. So this was a completely different time than that first story. This is a very well-known thing in the area, and many people claim to have had their own similar experiences. How crazy is that, guys? Have any of you ever heard of those Bold Street time slips or experienced something like that yourself? It is so fascinating. I would love to hear it. Let me know. And if you're new here, you gotta follow for more creepy story time.
Tonight's ghost picture made me stare at it like this for a while, okay? It's a good one. And if you're also living in the UK right now, you know it's hotter than Satan's arse crack, and I'm absolutely dying in this room. So let me show you this ghost picture. Now, this picture was sent to me by a lady called Shell, so massive thank you to you, Shell, for sending it to me. She said that they lived in Wales in a farmhouse at the time, and her daughter was in the bathroom and took a selfie. There was no one else in the room at the time. There was no candles lit, no smoke, nothing in this room. She said that paranormal investigators have looked at this picture and they think that there's several spirits in it. So let me know what you think. Let me just pop myself down here while I show you. Let's start with this absolutely terrifying geezer behind the door. Okay, now it looks like he's got two faces separated. He almost looks like Pennywise, doesn't he? He looks like he's got the teeth going on. Now, I thought he was wearing like some kind of necklace, but if you look closer here, it looks like another face there. Let me know if you can see it. I thought originally that the white cluster here in front of him might be hands, but it looks like there's faces in that too. Obviously, we have to be careful that we're not just making up faces within this, but to me, that face, especially him up there, I don't know, it feels like he's got his eye sockets, his nose, his mouth's open, but then you've got sort of a face coming off his face too. That looks really clear to me. Then what the hell is going on over here? She's taken a selfie and it's like distorted her face. So it's like some evil spirit looks like it's coming out over here, this side of her face. But it almost looks like it's mimicked and mirrored her face. Can you see it? It kind of looks like her, but it's also made her look like Lord Voldemort, because it's like it kind of like smoothed over her face as well. Like you can't really definitely see her features in this, which is really bizarre. And her hand looks like it's like 3 fingers, but obviously the picture's just so deeply distorted. And then you've got this kind of white mist everywhere. Can you guys see any more spirits anywhere? I don't know. Quite frankly, both these faces are disturbing. Obviously, there's multiple layers to them. But this one here is really disturbing me the most. It's almost like this thing is just trying to take over. I hate it. I will post this on my story for you guys to go and have a closer look. Now, Shell did also tell me that this place had bad smells, it had noises. She even heard crying. She sent me a video which spooks the dog and the lights are flickering. If you want me to do a separate video on that, I absolutely can do. She also said that something would mimic the family members, which isn't surprising considering how this thing kind of looks a bit like her daughter in this picture. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think of it, and I'll catch you in the next one.
Hi Huns, I hope you're all well. I just finished listening to the Huns After Dark episode about haunted mirrors, and it reminded me of a really strange experience I had just over a year ago. My partner and I went to the Maldives for a getaway, but not the typical luxury resort kind of trip people usually imagine. We stayed on a local island through a company that organises group trips where you stay in a family home together. Kind of like a luxury hostel. Everyone stays for the week and does activities. The building itself was also right next to a prison. From the moment we arrived, the place felt eerie. The building was old, dark, and just had a strange atmosphere that neither of us could shake. On the 4th day, after spending the day out at sea, I came back to the room to shower. Almost immediately, I had the overwhelming feeling that someone else was in the bathroom with me. I turned, expecting to see my partner, but instead I saw what looked like a dark figure through the fogged up shower glass. I blinked, and it disappeared. Later that evening, after dinner, we got back into bed when my partner suddenly grabbed my arm, looking genuinely terrified. He was staring in the mirror. When I looked over, there was a handprint on it. For context, there was a wide cupboard directly underneath the mirror, so it would have been difficult for someone to casually place a hand there without properly leaning over. We tried comparing the print to both of our hands, but neither matched. At that point, we were seriously freaked out. So we decided to leave the room for a while and walk along the beach around 10 or 11 p.m. When we came back, we sprayed the mirror with water and wiped it down with a t-shirt, making sure that the handprint was completely gone. But just as we got back into bed, another handprint appeared, this time smaller and in the corner of the mirror.
Oh, God.
That was enough for us. We grabbed our things immediately, left the room and booked another hotel. The next morning, we told the woman who owned the family home what had happened, but weirdly, she seemed completely unfazed, almost like it wasn't the first time she'd heard something like that. Naturally, I went down a Google rabbit hole afterwards and discovered that someone had died in the prison next door on that exact same day. I've attached a photo of the handprint just to add to the weirdness. Hope you're all doing well and keep up the amazing work. Catch you all soon.
Oh, that's
That's
vile.
a full handprint.
Yeah, that's vile. And it also looks recent.
Yeah.
Like that's, you
It's
know how
not something-
sometimes like when, like in the winter when the glass fogs.
Oh, that's horrible.
Vile.
Also looks like it's covered in foundation for some reason.
Yeah. Or sand.
Dirty ghosts.
If you hear children laughing at this Alabama playground after midnight, it's because you're standing in a place that legend says carries tragedy. There's this place in Huntsville, Alabama, right by the Maple Hill Cemetery, that locals call the Dead Children's Playground. That's the actual name, the Dead Children's Playground. By daylight, it looks harmless. Small playground with swings, a slide, and trees. Families go there, children play. But when the sun goes down and people leave, the energy and the vibe there changes. Playground sits next to one of Alabama's oldest cemeteries, and it is said that it is full of a lot of children who passed away in 1918 to the flu epidemic. Many, many children. And legend says that at night they come out to play. People have claimed to see swings moving on their own when there's no wind around. Not a slight movement, but full force, like someone is swinging back and forth. People even say that they have heard giggling and sometimes even crying. There has even been sightings of small dark figures playing between the cemetery and the park. But there's a story that a few teens went out to test this legend, and they were just fooling around and out there filming when all of a sudden, all the sound stopped. No wind, no bugs, no nothing. Then all at once, every swing began to move. Not all at one time, but one by one, like children were lining up to swing. No, guys, we're planning on going to Alabama at the end of the year, and if I get enough engagement on this post, then I will make sure to make a stop there and do a real-time video for you guys. Let me know if that's something that interests you. If you like spooky stories, legends, and more, make sure to follow along and stay strange and stay blessed. Until next time.
Have you ever saw something out in the woods that you couldn't explain, and when you tried to, nobody would believe you about it? Because this story takes place when I was in my early 20s and I was visiting my parents down in the Appalachian Mountains. It was a typical adventure day for Sparrow, and I decided to go take a hike in the woods off of Highlands Road. If you don't know Highlands Road, it is a long, windy road through the middle of the Smokies in the Appalachia. Well, I decided to pull off on the side of the road and hike all the way down the mountain, because once you got there, there was a large, stack of waterfalls. And out of all the cryptids and everything that I have talked about or seen or whatever in my life, I can tell you this is something I have never been able to explain or put together for people to believe me. I remember as I was taking the hike down the mountain, I started hearing these weird noises off into the distance. It was almost like a clicking sound, something that kind of sounded a little bit of an echo, kind of like that. And at first I thought it was maybe some kind of bird, right? Until I started walking further down the mountain and it started getting more aggressive. And then as I'm walking even further, I started to get more curious. And then I started to hear this noise that sounded kind of like a mountain lion. Like, y'all know how they say a mountain lion sounds like a screaming woman in the middle of the woods? And me being the crazy psycho that I am, I was like, yeah, let's keep going. So I come up upon this waterfall, right? And the first thing I do is I stop, I look at the waterfall, I start scanning my area, and I don't really see anything across the water. Then I started hearing that clicking sound again, like a little bit up the stream, and I looked up into the waterfall, and I kid you not, what it looked to me was almost like a person, but it just had this black coating on it, almost like I don't want to say Bigfoot, but if I had to compare it to anything, kind of looked similar to that. And it was literally just bathing, or whatever he or it was just bathing itself in the waterfall waters. Now, at that point, I got so nervous that I just kind of stopped and like stared at it for a second. Like I was just like, that was until this thing literally like noticed me and it turned around, looked at me, stopped bathing, and then I literally just turned around and started booking it out of there. And as I'm running back up to the mountain, you literally hear the loudest scream. I have never heard a scream like that in my entire life. And until this day, I tried to tell my parents back then and they were pulling the joke like, oh, it's Bigfoot or whatever, but I can tell that they didn't really believe me. But I want to know if y'all have ever experienced something like that out in the woods or anything similar. And by the way, whoever called the cops on me last night, you can go fuck yourself.
We've just had a recent Mothman sighting. Actually, 2. Now, these were reported to me that happened within the same general time frame of last week. This first report comes out of Bloomington, Illinois at ISU near Williams Hall. Now, we had a witness who wishes to remain anonymous. They said they were walking late one night near Williams Hall when they seen what appeared to be a man or something standing on one of the buildings. They said when they looked closely, whatever this was appeared to have glowing bright red eyes. And at the time, they thought maybe this was a Halloween prank until whatever this was took off into the sky with large flapping wings and headed east across town. The second report comes out of Lancaster, Pennsylvania, near the Safe Harbor Trail. There was a man, an older gentleman, who was walking his dog late Thursday night when he said his dog alerted to something and started barking. When he looked closely up on this hill, he seen something standing there that looked kind of like a man, but had glowing red eyes and large wings. And whatever this was, it made a large screeching howl and then took off directly into the sky. So, have you seen any Mothman sightings recently or heard of any? Please feel free to drop them in the comments or send me a message. There was a woman named Sarah who loved going to thrift stores. And one day when she happened to be at one of these thrift stores, she notices this beautiful vanity and mirror. And she absolutely had to have it. So she gets this vanity and she brings it back home and puts it in her bedroom and is so proud of it. Well, every night she starts sitting at the vanity brushing her hair. One night while she's brushing her hair, she looks into the mirror and she sees this woman staring back at her. She has gray hair, a wrinkled face, and she's just staring straight at her. And this woman then reaches her hand through the mirror and touches her hair. And then like that, she was gone from the mirror. And so Sarah decides not to tell her husband about this. Her husband, however, he started noticing this change in behavior with Sarah. She would be at this vanity and looking in the mirror for hours at a time. One night he was in the kitchen getting something to eat when all of a sudden he feels like he's being watched. And he looks over and there's Sarah with her head kind of popped out around the corner in the hallway, just staring at him with this grin on her face. And he says, "Hey, what are you doing?" And real fast, she pops her head back into the hallway and just takes off running. And she's laughing the whole time. And several places around the house, she would just kind of pop her head out and stare at him while he was in the shower, while he would be getting ready for work. And then he started to notice she would talk to this mirror. And she'd wonder, who are you talking to? And Sarah would say, no one, I don't know what you're talking about. And then one night, he's laying in bed with his wife, Sarah, when all of a sudden Sarah jumps on top of her husband and grabs his arms and pins him back and starts shaking him violently and then starts laughing hysterically. And when he looks at Sarah's face, he realizes that is no longer his wife. It is a woman with gray hair and a wrinkly face. And he manages to get who he thinks is this other woman that's not his wife off of him. And once again, when he looks over, it's Sarah, and she's back to normal. And she doesn't remember any of this, or that any of this even happened. So her husband starts to think, wait a second, all of this started happening when she brought that vanity home. So he gets the vanity, and he takes it back to this thrift store. And he tells them, there is something wrong with this vanity. It's affecting my wife. And they say, it's crazy that you say that, because you're the third person that's bought this vanity and brought it back and said something was wrong with it. And as soon as he went back home, his wife was normal again. Are there giant spiders in Colorado? Now, in the 1800s, there was a story that came out of Chaffee County, Colorado. And it said that some of the townspeople found this mysterious cave. And within this cave, they found these very large spiders that were the size of cats. These spiders were not very normal spiders. Sometimes they acted very intelligently, and they were almost dog-like. Now, it's said that these locals, they would take the webbing from these spiders, which was almost like a pure silk, and they would make rope and clothing. They would even hunt the spiders themselves and make gloves. And the weirdest part about this story is some of the locals were said to have taken these spiders and turned them into pets, and they would use them to sort of protect their house and their livestock. But it said that these spiders were also sometimes aggressive, and from time to time, a person or an animal would go missing, and many people suspected it was these mysterious spiders. Now, there was a story of a prospector named Schultz. Schultz heard from some of the locals about this cave, and apparently there was a very large vein of gold. But he was told by the locals, do not go there because that's where these spiders live, and they do not like people going near this cave. But he was filled with greed. He heads up the mountain, and he ends up finding the cave. For 3 days, he's prospecting, and he returns back to the townspeople, and he tells them, I found gold, and there's lots of it, enough to make this whole town rich. But none of the townspeople would go anywhere near this cave. And he said to them, I've seen these spiders. Mostly they hide in a cave. They don't come out during the day. But at night, they come very close to my camp. They've taken one of my dogs. They've almost taken one of my mules. And I'm afraid eventually they will take me. But he was so consumed with greed that he decided to go back. And many days passed. They never heard from the prospector. And after about a week, they went up to the mountain and found this cave. And all they found remaining of him were his bones. And it said still to this day in Chaffee County, in the mountains of Colorado, you can see these giant, abnormally large spiders.
Weird spooky story time. And have you ever gone somewhere and felt like something noticed you first? This was sent to me via voice memo by someone who spent a lot of time in different parts of Mexico, especially in the old historic parts. She said growing up, they would often travel to her mother's hometown, and that every time she went there, she always felt like she was being cradled or kept safe. She said that she would roam around her grandparents' property and she would always find like fragments of history, like old pottery and stuff. She would even find obsidian all around the property. Basically, just signs that people had lived there long before her family had. That's not the stuff that stayed with her. She said later in life, she ended up visiting one of the oldest settlements in Mexico near Mexico City. Both times that she went there, something happened. As she laid in bed, she would feel these intense rushes of energy. It would start at her toes and it would work its way up her body, and she said it would just do that over and over again. She said that it would happen until she couldn't move and felt paralyzed. It felt like it was going back and forth, like as if something was passing through her. The second her husband walked into the room, it just stopped. Just like that, gone. At first, she just brushed it off. Told her friend about it, and her friend was like, it's probably just anxiety. Then the next time she went there, it happened again. The exact same experience, the same energy, the same paralysis. It was the exact same experience. She said that it was the feeling of something arriving. That's when her perspective changed. She said that she felt like whatever it was wasn't there to harm her, or like it was greeting her or welcoming her. In the home, there's an altar that's like a central part of the house. Every time that they visit, they leave an offering, they set intention. They treat it as something that's alive. She said over time, she started to realize that the energy that she was feeling was something ancient, something tied to the land, something that protects it. Land there has been inhabited for centuries. You're stepping into something that's already been there long before anyone else has. Maybe it just noticed her. Once she acknowledged it and showed it some respect, it makes everything peaceful. She acknowledges that not every place feels that way. That some places feel off and heavy, like whatever is in some spaces isn't love. Have any of you ever stepped into a space that had really high energy but wasn't heavy, more felt like a protective space, almost like you're having a spiritual experience? Let me know in the comments what you guys think, and if you've ever had this experience, send me your story.
I used to do appliance repair, and there's still one house that I think about all the time. So a guy called saying that his washing machine would turn on in the middle of the night randomly. And I just kind of figured it was maybe a wiring issue or a control panel issue. So I drove out to the house thinking it would be a normal house visit. So I drove out to the house, and the house is in the middle of nowhere. There's literally no neighbors, no street lights. Like if I were to come here at night, it would be dark. And so the customer, they opened their door and he greeted me. And the first thing he told me was, if you hear knocking downstairs, don't open the door. I said, okay. And he stared at me and he said, I'm serious. And I was like, okay, sounds good. And so he took me down to the basement. And when I got to the basement, it was already a very uncomfortable feeling. It was very empty. There was no furniture, no storage, literally like this huge space that felt too big for the house. And then it was just a washer and a dryer. While I was checking the machine, I just asked, like, how long has this been happening for? And they said, only since we just sealed the other staircase. And I was like, what do you mean by that? And he pointed towards like the far wall of the basement, and it looked like completely new concrete, fresh paint. It looked completely different than the rest of the basement. Like it was just barely done, you could tell. Before I could say anything else, that's when I heard it. I heard 3 knocks coming from inside of the wall. It was faint, but you could hear it. And I looked over at him expecting him to react, but he barely even looked up at me. And he said, yeah, that happens usually when somebody new's in the basement. At that point, I was trying to convince myself it was the pipes or the framework or something, but then 3 knocks happened again, and then a perfectly spaced out time frame, and then 3 knocks again. And that's when I finally asked him, like, who's behind the wall? And he just said, there's nobody there anymore. The wording of that made me feel really gross. I did not like it. So I hurried, did my job, I packed up, and I was getting ready to go. And that's when I noticed something beside the washer. I noticed small prints pressed into the concrete like somebody had just stepped in wet concrete. And there was 6 sets of them going towards that new wall, but there's only 5 sets coming back. I left without even charging them. I just wanted to get out of there as fast as I could. And I got home and I did some research online, and I found out that back in the 80s there was actually a little girl who went missing, and it was at that same property. What really messed me up was the listing of the house. It showed pictures of what the old basement looked like, and there was a staircase right where that fresh paint and that concrete was in the basement.
Let's look at some more of the terrifying photos that you guys have sent me. Some friends and I traveled to Jerome, Arizona, which is one of the most haunted places in America. I love spooky stuff and was super excited to check it out. After a day of exploring, we went to this bar called the Spirit Room and we snapped some pictures. We didn't notice this picture came out like this until later that night. While my friends were freaking out at the photo, I was telling them to stop worrying. But a few days later, I went through one of the worst experiences of my entire life, and I can't help but think that this photo was some kind of omen. I have a picture of my daughter that my mom took when she was around 2 years old. When the picture was taken, there was nothing behind her. At least, that's what we thought. It was taken with an old phone, so no AI. Backstory: my mom and stepdad bought the house back in 2000, and I don't quite remember if things started happening right away or sometime later. It started with creaks on the floors and very eerie feelings, until one day I felt a person breathing hard and whispering. My siblings also felt and saw things, like shadows and a little girl. I've also seen a very dark presence with bright eyes walking on my daughter's bed and past me. In the photo of my daughter, there appears to be something behind her peeking around the corner. My daughter is now 16 years old, so that happened back in 2011 or 2012. I have a creepy video to show you. I recently came across a video that was taken inside of a church during Semana Santa or Holy Week. If you're unfamiliar with Semana Santa or Holy Week, it is basically the week leading up to Easter, and it's supposed to commemorate Jesus' life before the crucifixion and his resurrection. And if you grew up religious like I did, then you're probably familiar with the idea that energy is heightened during this week. Whether it's positive spiritual energy or negative spiritual energy doesn't really matter. The veil is just thinner. So this video was taken earlier this year during Holy Week, and it focuses on a Virgin Mary statue that appears to start blinking. Paranormal and unexplainable videos, this one has sparked a lot of debate. Where some people believe this was some kind of miracle or paranormal happening, other people believe this is literally just AI generated or edited really well. But according to some of the people who worked in this church, when they saw this video circulating, they let people know that they had always had negative feelings in this church. When they saw this statue blinking, they felt fear rather than comfort. And if you've been here a while, you already know my stance on this. Anytime a religious statue moves, I will always find it creepy. And that goes for any statue, I just don't like them. But as always, let me know what you think of this one.
Series of spooky stories except for its women's intuition part 7. I'd been on a few dates with this guy. He asked if I wanted to come over and watch a movie. I said yes. As I got closer to the address, I got sicker and sicker, like weak in the knees from nausea. I walked up to the apartment like I'm too sick to drive home and I don't want to be rude. I knocked on the door, he opened it, and there were like 7 dudes in his apartment drinking. I said I needed to go home. I didn't feel good. Dude tried to tell me to just come in till I feel better. I refused and rushed to my car. As soon as I closed and locked the door, my stomach felt better. 7? And he didn't mention that? I had a severe POTS attack at the grocery store and collapsed at the register. My phone immediately began ringing. It was my mom. She said she felt like something was wrong. Women's intuition is one thing, but you add being a mother and that's your baby on top of it? Man, I went to visit my dad because he wasn't feeling good. I told him maybe you should go in. He kept saying if I don't feel better in the morning, I'll go. He almost had me convinced, but my gut said no. I made him get ready to go and we went. 10 minutes after getting there, he coded. If we wouldn't have went, he would have died at home. Another time when I was dating my ex, I found out he was doing drugs. There was a day that he wanted to hang out with his friends, and those friends are usually up to no good. His mom and I told him to promise us that he wouldn't do anything. And when he came back home that day, we asked him about it, and he said that he didn't do anything. That night, I went to bed laying down on his chest. I had a dream of sitting in the car, and he was sitting in the middle seat directly in my rear view. When I looked at him, it was like I was facing him directly. And he said, I don't know why you guys are so proud of me because I said I didn't do it, but I did. I woke up right away and asked him about it, and he denied it. But a few weeks later, I found proof that he did, and he also eventually confessed that he did do something that day. One time, me and my ex took our kids to a kickback at his friend's house. Upon arrival, I saw cars that aren't usually there. Something in my gut said go home. We stayed in the car almost 20 minutes going back and forth about going home. I even said that I would just take our kids home and let him enjoy himself. He begged for me to come too, so I reluctantly did. Big mistake. The guys in the garage got robbed at gunpoint not even an hour later. I'll never not trust my intuition again, especially with the fucking kids there. I had a dream that my ex and our roommate were cheating together. Relationships and roommates do not work out. Being absolutely fucking awful to me and just borderline making me want to not be alive. I woke up sobbing 3 nights in a row. I asked, they deny it. 2 years later, it went down exactly like in my dream, down to them bullying me and trying to make me act crazy. Held that shit down though and handled it with grace, even though everyone said that I should have absolutely flew off the handle. Yeah, you're better than me. A few years ago, a buddy and I decided to go car camping during the winter a couple of states away and visit a few national parks. At one point during the trip, we stopped to spend the night at a riverbank in a very dense forest area. We're talking no signal, no light pollution, no roads, no people. While we were making dinner, someone else showed up at the riverbank and we didn't think much of it. The man later introduced himself and offered us some party favors, to which we declined, but he gave me an immediate bad vibe. Since we had been gardening that night, I thought I was just being paranoid. Later that night, the gut feeling just kept getting worse. We were watching the stars and I noticed the guy had moved his car out of view. While looking into the woods, I started to see a flash of light that would go off and disappear, almost like a siren. To me, it felt like a giant warning light was going off. I immediately had the instinct to run. I convinced my friend to drive to the closest town and we got the fuck out of there. I always knew I saved us that day. Years later, my friend sent me a post of a social media of a girl describing the same forest, same lights in the woods, and the same feeling of being watched and fleeing for her life with her sister. A lot of people disappear from national parks, and I truly believe that if we didn't listen to the warning, that we wouldn't have made it out alive. And y'all know that the national parks are like the best place to do crazy shit because people just go missing there all the time and they're just gone. So I would rather just stay away from them. One night I was staying with my sister in her camper. I was hungry, so I went inside my mom's house. We were in her backyard and I decided to watch TV for a bit because I couldn't sleep. And all of a sudden, I get this overwhelming feeling that I needed to go lock the door to the camper. So I spammed my sister because something also told me to not leave the house. I woke her up to lock the door, and not even 5 minutes later, she calls me freaking out because someone tried to get into the camper and almost broke the door trying to open it. During a snowstorm, my brother was laying on his couch in his living room. He fell asleep and had a dream that my grandma was telling him to go outside. He got up and went outside. 2 minutes later, a huge tree fell on his house in the exact spot where he was laying. Thank you, Granny. On Black Saturday, Australia, 2009, me and my now husband were driving up the back road to a town called Kinglake. I got a really bad feeling about halfway up, and I told my husband I felt like death was riding in the car with us. And to please turn around, we could grab coffee closer to home. My hubby never ignores my spidey senses, so without question, he turned around. King behavior. We were having coffee for about 15 minutes when the news at the venue we were at came on. The whole mountain that we had just been on had exploded with one of the worst bushfires in Australian history. We came so close to a horrific death that day. I never ignore my intuition. It saved my life and the lives of those close to me multiple times. Come back for part 8, and if you haven't watched all of the other episodes, you can click the comments that I'm responding to in these videos, or you can click on the playlist down below.
I buy dead people's history, and I wish I'd never bought that 1994 tape. Welcome to the Creepy Cozy Cottage, where creepy and cozy meet. Grab a blanket and get cozy because I'm about to read a creepy story. My name is Liam. I buy dead people's history. I run a small antique shop in an isolated, foggy town in Oregon. Last month, I went to an estate sale at an old abandoned farmhouse. The family had vanished back in '94. In the basement, buried under the layers of dust, I found a heavy, vintage, reel-to-reel tape recorder, a beautiful wooden Panasonic one. Inside it was a single, unlabeled magnetic tape. The auctioneer sold it to me for $20. He just wanted it out of his sight. That night, inside of my empty shop, the rain was pouring against the glass. Tap, tap, tap. I cleaned the machine, plugged it in, and pressed the heavy mechanical play button. Clunk. The plastic reels began to spin slowly. For the first 30 seconds, there was nothing but the low, warm hiss of empty tape. Hiss. Then a sound emerged. It was a child's voice, a little girl giggling. But the laughter was strangely slowed down, distorted. "Daddy," she whispered, "the man in the wall is playing the skin game again." My skin crawled. I reached out to stop the tape, but then a second voice broke through. It was a man, sobbing, breathing heavily. I locked the basement. The man wept into the microphone, but he didn't come through the door. He grew out of the shadows, under the floorboards. Suddenly, a violent, wet, tearing sound echoed from the speakers, like wet cloth being ripped apart. The man let out a blood-curdling shriek and was cut off instantly by a loud, mechanical click. The tape went silent, just as the static remained hissing. I sat there frozen, staring at the spinning reels. That's when I noticed the smell of old, stagnant blood and wet hair filling my entire shop. I couldn't sleep that night. The sound of that tearing flesh kept echoing in my skull. The next day, I decided to do something stupid. I wanted to see if anyone on the internet knew about the 1994 farmhouse incident. I set up my phone on a tripod and started a live broadcast on Reddit for my followers. I wanted to play the tape live to see if anyone recognized the voices. "Hey guys," I said to the camera, "listen to this tape I found." I pressed play. The audio began. The little girl's whisper, the man sobbing, the wet tearing sound. The comment section on my live stream went absolutely insane. Fake, creepy, turn it off. But then one user, named Shadow94, commented something that made my heart stop. "Look behind you, on the monitor." Behind my desk, I had a large black security monitor displaying live feed of my shop's showroom. I slowly turned my head to look at it. The showroom was dark. It was only lit by the street lamps outside. On the screen, I saw myself sitting at the desk broadcasting, but then the tape on the reel-to-reel recorder hit that violent click sound. On the security monitor, the reflection of my shop window changed. The glass didn't show the rainy street anymore. It showed a massive, impossibly tall creature pressed flat against the glass from the outside. It had no face, just a giant, wet, vertical slit down the middle of its head. I whipped my head around to look at the real window. It was empty, just rain. I looked back at the monitor. The creature on the screen was now inside the room. It was standing directly behind my chair. It raised a long skeletal arm and placed a single pale finger onto my shoulder. In real life, in that exact moment, I felt a bone-chilling, freezing pressure drop onto my left shoulder. I screamed, throwing myself forward off the chair. My phone fell, breaking the live stream. I didn't look back. I sprinted out of the shop into the freezing rain, leaving the door wide open. I drove to a hotel 3 towns away, shaking, crying, locking myself in the bathroom. I stayed there for 3 days until the police finally agreed to check the shop. When they went in, they found the shop completely untouched. No monster, no sign of a break-in, except for one thing. The vintage tape recorder was gone. They thought I had a psychological breakdown. I never went back to that shop. I closed the business, sold the inventory online, and moved to a small, modern apartment in Seattle. No antiques, no old things, everything new. But yesterday was my birthday. A heavy cardboard box arrived at my door with no return address. I thought it was a gift from my sister, and I opened it. Inside, resting on a bed of old newspaper, was a single black modern cassette tape. Written on it in permanent marker was my name, Liam. My hands shook badly. I could barely breathe. I didn't want to play it. I threw it in the trash chute of my building. I went to bed, praying, trying to forget. But exactly at 3:14 a.m., I woke up. The apartment was dead silent, except for a faint rhythmic sound coming from inside my bedroom closet. It was the sound of a magnetic tape spinning. I froze in my bed, paralyzed with absolute terror. The closet door slowly clicked open an inch, and from the darkness inside, a voice drifted out. It wasn't the little girl. It wasn't the man. It was my own voice. It was a recording of me from 3 days ago screaming in my hotel bathroom. But the recording was slowed down, distorted, wet, and beneath my screaming voice, I could hear the wet, rhythmic clicking of fingers tapping against the inside of the closet door, moving closer to my bed. Unfortunately, that is where it ends. Let me know what you thought of that story and what you would do in his position, because I don't know. If you have any scary stories of your own that you'd like me to read, just send me a message.
I need to tell you guys this ghost story. This story was sent into my email, and if you have any ghost stories, paranormal encounters, or scary stories that you want to share, you can send them to the email in my bio. The room went completely silent after that. The next morning, I kept thinking about the app, so stupidly, I opened it again. This time, I actually read the rules. Never leave the session without dragging the planchette to goodbye. Failure to do so may result in unwanted encounters. I realized I had never ended the session properly. At that point, I deleted the app immediately, but the entire rest of the trip, I felt like something was wrong. I felt heavy, like something was attached to me. When it finally came time to leave, I glanced back at that old church that had freaked me out from the beginning. I swear I saw a figure standing in one of those broken windows. Eventually, I got home and tried to forget about everything, and for a while, life went back to normal. I was sitting in my bedroom late one night, scrolling on my phone. My bedroom door was open and the hallway light was on. Across from my room was the bathroom, and beside that were the stairs leading up to my room. That's where I heard them coming from. Large, heavy footsteps, slow, headed up those stairs toward me. I looked up casually at first, expecting it to be my mom or my sister, but standing there was a tall, black figure. It walked directly into the bathroom, and I shot up immediately and ran after it. But when I turned the corner to look, there was nothing there. But I noticed the bathtub beside the door was completely black. It was cloaked in shadow. And after that night, things got worse. I started hearing footsteps, whispers, hearing my name when nobody called me, waking up at exactly 3 a.m. over and over and over again. And then came the dream. I was trapped inside this abandoned house with a little boy beside me. Everything around us was destroyed. There were fallen shelves and giant wood crates, broken furniture blocking every hallway, and something was chasing us. To me, it looked like a large, distorted bear, and every time it caught us, the dream would restart again and again and again. Minutes started feeling like hours, hours felt like days, and I kept trying to wake myself up, but I couldn't. Eventually, I realized that the only way out was helping the little boy escape, so I kept running, over and over, until finally we found stairs. And at the top was a bathroom with a bedroom beside it, exactly like my own house. We hid behind the bathroom door while footsteps echoed through the hallway upstairs. The bear had turned into a man, and he was looking for us. Eventually, he walked away, so we ran. Suddenly, everything around us turned white. completely white, like we were standing inside light itself, and through the brightness I saw two figures, a man and a woman. And then the little boy stepped forward between them and grabbed their hands. One by one, the shadows faded, and suddenly they looked human. In the dream, the boy turned back to me, smiled, and whispered, "Thank you." Then all three of them disappeared into the light, and I woke up. For whatever reason, after that, I felt different. Lighter, somehow. Still not alone exactly, but lighter. Even now, years later, weird things still happen sometimes. Footsteps, dreams, waking up at 3 a.m., and every once in a while, I think about that app and wonder if I've left a door open, I'll never be able to close.
In 1996, a man named Brian Bethel was paying his cable bill while sitting outside of a strip mall after he had worked a really late shift, so this was late at night. Suddenly, he noticed a group of teenagers that was standing pretty close to his car. They walked up to him and they asked him if he could give them a ride to their mom's house, as they were wanting to see the Late Show movie and they needed to get some money. The problem was, this Late Show, the final viewing of the night, had started 45 minutes ago, so it seems odd that they would be wanting to go see this movie. That was when he noticed their eyes. They were completely black. He was terrified, so he threw his car into reverse and drove away, but he looked in his rearview mirror and what he saw was exactly nothing. The kids were gone. He wrote about his encounter in the Abilene News Reporter, and since then, many other people have shared their experiences with these black-eyed children. And all of the encounters had some things in common. The children were either small children or they were teenagers, but they had no whites in their eyes. It was only black. And in all of these encounters, the children were trying to get either into their house or into their vehicle or anything. And they would use anything to try to get in, like saying, "Hey, I need a ride. Hey, I need to call my mom," like something. They were trying to get into the house with any reason they could find. Very little is known about the people who did let them in, but there have been a couple of people who said that they did in fact let these black-eyed children in, and terrible news followed. Either somebody had a terrible accident or they got a really bad diagnosis, but something bad would happen. In a lot of these encounters, the kids were wearing old clothes, like mid-century clothing, but there were even some kids who were wearing a little bit more modern clothes, but they were from sports teams or colleges that had no longer existed. The thing that's the most terrifying about these is they present themselves as the most vulnerable among us. When we see children, we automatically want to help. But many people believe that they are just here to bring destruction into our lives. But they kind of also remind me of like the vampire legends where they have to be invited in. Like they cannot just come into your house, they have to be invited in. And when you don't invite them in, eventually they just wander off or they just leave. They also have a lot of similarities to Irish folklore, like the changelings, or also a lot of Native American folklore, like the California Lake Tahoe and Nevada Pyramid Lake water babies. So what are your thoughts on it? Do you think that the black-eyed children legend is true, or is it all just a urban legend? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments and follow for more spooky things.
Am I horrible for asking for a divorce because my stepdaughter pushed me down the stairs and I lost our baby? Story time. So I've got a child of my own from my previous marriage. Unfortunately, my ex-husband passed away, so I became a single mother. Then I met my now husband, who have got a daughter. At the time that we met, she was only 3 years old. She got on very well with my daughter. Then we got married and everything has been lovely and great. We sat both the children down and told them that we were planning on trying for a child together. My daughter, she did not have a problem at all. But then my stepdaughter, her face changed. She was upset. She was angry. She said she did not want any brother or sister, a sibling. My daughter tried to talk her out of it, saying that she would love this little sibling just like she loves her. She says she's just happy with her and my daughter being the only children, and she just wants to be loved by just us and not the love divided to another sibling. Then we decided to get counseling for her, and some of the counselors said to just let her express her emotions. Some of the other counselors said, suggested other things, which we tried, but nothing seemed to work. We decided to go ahead and started trying for another baby, which we did. After a year, I finally fell pregnant. I was excited. We shared the news to both our children. But then my stepdaughter was not happy whatsoever. She was extremely angry. Then one day that we're going downstairs, she was stood on the landing. The next thing I felt on my back is a massive push. I tumbled down the stairs. Bearing in mind there are cameras in the house. I lost the pregnancy. I was badly injured, you know? So CPS were involved, police were involved, but yeah, they couldn't really do anything but to put her in a psych ward. When they asked her, she said she told us that she didn't want another sibling, but we still insisted. We still went against her wishes and we did this. After the pregnancy was lost, she went back to being a normal child like she was before. Now, I just feel scared. Even people trying to help her, professionals, as in healthcare professionals, are even scared of her. Bearing in mind she's only 9 years old. I don't even know what to do. I'm even scared for my own life and that of my daughter. My daughter says she's scared of her. So, was I wrong in asking for a divorce? My husband thinks I'm taking this over the top. We can always try for another baby and that's not the end of it. But what if trying for another baby and realizing that I'm pregnant and she does the worst? I'm not going to wait for the worst to happen to either myself or to my daughter. So, I call it quits. Some people are saying I'm taking this too far and therefore I should reconsider. But guys, what would you do if that was you in my shoe? Please, honest opinion, thoughts and ideas, drop them down in the comment section below. Thank you guys.
Alright, we've been looking for this cave for about half a year now. We finally think we found it. It's a 150-foot drop. This has got to be it, because there's a little hole here that's just pumping a bunch of air. Probably gonna throw a little stick down here, see if it goes. Holy crap. That is it. Oh, it's like a immediate rating now. Oh, man. Holy crap. Dude. He made it. Did he? Yeah. Oh, man. This is a scary one. Okay, coming down. Whoa! Oh man, that's a giant formation. Holy crap. Dude, that was like the funnest rappel I've ever done. I know, dude. There's like a huge river over here. Oh my gosh. Off rope. Huge pass. Dang. There's a fat catfish down in this water. No. I don't know where it went. This is massive. Dude, there's so many fish down there. Like small fish just everywhere. Yeah. That's insane. Look at these huge dome-looking things. Yeah. I hear the water moving. I'm gonna go find out what this water noise is. Holy crap, you almost fell. Ooh, that's refreshing. This is crazy. All right, there's a bunch of fish down there. I don't want to step on them. Dang, look at the color on this. Black and yellow. This is a cool cave. Whoa, look at this. Looks like a Christmas tree. Heck yeah. Alright, I don't think their way connected to my way. I think I gotta go back for them. I'm just going deeper into the mountain. Hey! Dude, this place is awesome. Right? What? Check this out. This is one of the most well-defined crystal pools I've ever seen.
This is a little different than what we typically do. My first question is, I would be curious if any of those guys at any point felt like they were being watched. Not necessarily in a crazy, creepy way. Maybe it was just sort of a passing moment of like, I feel like I'm being watched. Maybe they didn't notice it because they were too involved in what they were doing, but this is an ET group that is not bad. They live actually a lot deeper down into the core of the earth, but this is a area that they move through, pass through. Not all the formations in there are created or caused by ETs. Some are. This one in particular is. For me, it feels different. There's almost an electricity to it versus the other formations feel very grounded and earthly and clearly connected to the cave. Not saying this one is not connected to it. There's just an extra energy, electricity attached to it. Beings, they come from, it's like an ELR 40, 30. That is the name that they go by if you were to translate it into something we would understand. They obviously have no intention to harm. They wanted to make sure whoever was moving through that space was not going to harm the space, do anything to disturb the energy in that space. This is a group that comes through, it feels like they live below sea level. And they move through this cave as a way of wanting to come up and sort of move about. CT group, like many, are able to shimmer in and out so they can be in a location, watch, and not be seen. This is not a group that interacts with humans or government or anything like that. They stay very isolated. They do interact with other beings that live under the sea and in the sea, but they are a very isolated, small group. Don't want to be revealed, and they don't want anyone looking for them or even were willing to give me that much information. And to be clear, they don't live in this cave. They move through the cave as it's like they're saying like see it kind of as an elevator for them. It's just a pass through for them.
Might have known the story of real-life boogeyman.
My name is Marilyn, and today I'm writing to you about my boyfriend Anthony's scary encounter. His story takes place in Wilmington, California. When Anthony was about 10 years old, he and his family were living in a big 3-bedroom home. The house had a large kitchen, a really nice living room, and a long hallway. Anthony's room was the last room at the end of the hallway. Now, for a little background on the house, his aunt used to live there before them. She claimed that there was a little ghost girl living in the house with her. His aunt would talk to the ghost girl all the time. She would get so in tune with her conversations that it almost seemed like she was possessed. She lived in that house for a few more years, but eventually decided to move into a smaller home since it was just her. That's when Anthony and his family decided to move in. His aunt did warn them about the little ghost girl living in the house, but his family just thought she was crazy because she had a history of using heavy drugs. So they brushed it off and moved in, not thinking much of what she had told them. Pretty soon, Anthony started to feel strange in the house. He would get chills running down his spine for absolutely no reason. He would feel cold spots in certain areas of the house, especially in his room and in the darkest parts of the long hallway. He tried to ignore it because he didn't want to freak himself out. But one night, he woke up in the middle of the night feeling a cold breeze brush through his room. His window was shut, the AC was off, and there was no wind. He quickly noticed that his blanket was on the floor. He picked it up and covered himself again. As soon as he pulled the blanket over himself, he felt a weird, heavy presence. It felt like someone was staring at him. He turned around, too scared to fully look. Then, out of nowhere, his blanket was torn away from him and thrown onto the floor. He quickly ran to his parents' room, screaming and crying. He told them what had happened, but they thought he had just had a bad dream. They encouraged him to go back to his room, say a prayer, and go back to sleep. So he went back to his room, said a quick prayer, and eventually did fall asleep. Nothing else happened that night. The next day, he came home from school, and his parents had gotten him a brand new kite. He was excited and ran outside to fly it. There wasn't any wind that day, so he decided to ride his bike while trying to get the kite to fly. It worked, and he rode his bike from one end of the street to the other. Seeing his kite fly in the air brought him so much happiness that he completely forgot about what had happened to him the night before. But that joy would soon come to an end. As he was passing his house to get to the end of the block, he turned to look at his home. That's when he saw the little ghost girl staring at him from the window in his parents' room. Then, like a flash, she moved to the window in his sister's room. And finally, she moved to the window in his own bedroom. She was waving at him with a large evil smirk on her face. He said the way she stared at him with those piercing eyes, full of hate and evil, made him feel sick and weak. He was so terrified that he didn't want to go back inside the house. Later that night, Anthony woke up again. Before moving to the United States, I lived in El Salvador. My family and I experienced paranormal events there, but this one has stayed with me ever since. I moved to the US when I was around 7 years old. Some of my memories from that time are a bit unclear, but this one is still vivid. One late night, I went to the living room to get a glass of water. For some reason, my siblings, my cousins, and my mom were all there. Suddenly, my mom started panicking. She told all of us to duck down and stay away from the windows. She quickly locked the doors, shut the windows, and closed everything as if she was trying to protect us from something outside. The fear in her voice made it clear that whatever was happening wasn't normal. I was curious, so I carefully peeked outside. In the middle of the road, I saw something I still can't explain. It looked like an old wooden cart, but there were no horses and no one pulling it. It was just moving on its own. The cart looked disturbing. It was covered in skulls, with torn veils flowing from its sides. I also remember wooden sticks attached to it, with skulls hanging from them. Then, suddenly, everything around it turned green and foggy, like the entire street had been filled by this eerie glow. I didn't feel scared exactly, but something about it felt wrong, so I immediately ducked back down. Years later, my family and I were talking about the paranormal experiences we had growing up. That's when my mom brought up something she had seen before. A cart. She even said it had a specific name, but I can't remember what she called it. When she started describing it, I realized it sounded exactly like the cart I remembered seeing that night as a child. So I asked her if she remembered that night too. The night she told us to duck down and stay away from the windows. but she looked confused and told me she didn't remember that happening. She said she didn't remember that specific night at all. I started explaining what I remembered. The old wooden cart, the skulls, the torn veils, the way it moved on its own, and that strange green fog around it. That's when she told me that what I was describing sounded exactly like the cart she had seen before. After doing some research, I think what I saw might have been La Carreta Chillona. To this day, I still don't understand how my mom and I both saw the same thing, but somehow remembered it so differently. Thinking about it still gives me the chills. If anyone watching this knows more about this legend or can confirm if that's what we saw, please let me know.
Series of spooky stories except for tell me the wildest way your body has rejected the person you're dating. I started getting really bad stomach and pelvic pain whenever we were getting down. He called his mom about it and she asked to speak to me. She said, "Darling, that's your gut. Trust your gut. When the mother is saying it, you know you're fucked." I profusely vomited. I never puked in my life. I would go years without puking, and I puked more in that relationship than I have ever puked in my entire life, ever. He wanted to have a baby with me. I stopped getting my period. I didn't get it for almost a year. Got it 2 weeks after we broke up. This isn't totally feral, but I remember asking God if we should break up, have a red car pass by me. There were absolutely no cars. That's also you trying to, like, stay in some way because, like, really, is there going to be a car? And all of a sudden, 6 red cars passed by me back to back. He said, "You're not getting away with it today, girl." Not all that crazy, but I couldn't sleep next to him at all. I'd have anxiety trying to fall asleep, and I would stay up all night. I literally got so constipated every time we got back together. He was so full of shit that my body was mirroring that by also being full of shit. I was having heart palpitations so bad I thought it was my time. Why do we deal with this? While we were together, I couldn't eat. I would start to vomit the food as soon as I started eating. When we broke up the next day, I ate 2 plates of food. This comment says, seeing a lot of asexual comments. I relate so hard. Sometimes you just haven't met the right person yet. There were so many comments of these women saying, I thought that I was asexual. So many. We would argue and I would have to puke mid-argument. That is exactly what would happen to me. Threw up so much. I suffered from insomnia the entire relationship, 12 years of not sleeping well. The first night I slept in my own bed in my own place, I slept like the dead. And for another 2 years, I haven't suffered insomnia. Lost all the weight that I gained 12 years in one summer without trying. Skin cleared, and it turns out I'm not as introverted as I thought. Here's all the signs that you need to leave those terrible relationships.